Close your eyes, if you'd like, and let the world around you soften, its edges blurring like ink spilled into water. The clamor of today fades, replaced by a gentle stillness, as if the evening itself were wrapping you in a warm woolen cloak. Tonight we leave behind the rush of modern life, drifting back through centuries to a time when the world moved to a slower, humbler rhythm. Not the pageantry of castles or the clash of armored knights, but the quiet pulse of a medieval village where life unfolded in the spaces between dawn's first light and dusk's soft shadow. Our story centers on the women who lived in these villages, medieval peasant women, whose names were rarely recorded, whose voices were seldom heard, yet whose hands shaped the world around them. They were the heartbeat of their communities, their lives woven into the fabric of survival, season by season, task by task. They rose with the sun, worked until it set, and carried their families through years of hardship and fleeting moments of joy. Their stories are not in grand chronicles or illuminated manuscripts, but in the earth they tilled, the bread they baked, the children they raised, and the quiet resilience that sustained them. We'll walk beside one such woman, perhaps named Agnes or Marjorie, though to her neighbors she might simply be the miller's wife. Her name matters less than her work, which defines her place in the village's rhythm. We'll explore her home, her labor, her faith, her joys, and her sorrows, touching the textures of her life, the coarse wool of her dress, the cool weight of a water bucket, the warmth of a hearth fire. This is not a tale of heroics or extraordinary deeds, but of ordinary persistence, of small acts that held together a world long vanished. It's a story meant to calm, to ground, to lull you into a gentle understanding of lives lived centuries ago. So find a comfortable place. Let your breath slow, your shoulders ease. The modern world can wait. For now, there is only the soft crackle of a distant fire, the rustle of leaves in a village lane, and the steady rhythm of a life unfolding in the medieval countryside. Picture the faint glow of dawn, the scent of damp earth, the distant crow of a rooster. Let these carry you gently across time, into a world where survival was an art, practiced quietly day after day. Let us begin. The village lies hushed in the pre-dawn chill, wrapped in a delicate shroud of mist that clings to the fields like a whispered secret. The air is heavy with the scent of damp earth, dew-soaked grass, and the faint musk of livestock stirring in their pens. A rooster's tentative crow cuts through the stillness, sharp and fleeting, like a needle through cloth. In a small cottage, its walls of wattle and daub barely holding back the cold, a peasant woman stirs beneath the covers. Let us call her Agnes, though her neighbors might know her by a different name. The miller's wife, the woman with the fine garden, or simply her who sings to the goats. Names change, roles endure. Her sleep has been light, like the fluttering of a leaf on water. It is broken by the creak of the wooden bed frame, the shifting weight of her children tangled in blankets beside her, or the faint stirring of wind through the thatch above her head. The bed is not large, only a frame of uneven timber holding a lumpy mattress filled with straw, flattened with time and full of the scents of earth and dried grass. A single woolen blanket, warm, thin, and patched with care, traps what warmth it can. Yet cold always finds its way in, curling around bare feet, brushing against her cheek like the memory of snow. The hearth, cold now but never truly dead, holds a few faint embers pulsing softly like the heart of the home. Its coals are the color of dusk, their heat whispering beneath ash. Shadows stretch long across the packed dirt floor, reaching toward the door, toward the day that waits beyond. Agnes opens her eyes, still laced with sleep. She lies still for a moment longer, not out of laziness, but to listen to the hush of breath around her, the creak of roof beams, the first rustle of the village waking. She breathes slowly, the air cool against her teeth. The light through the shuttered window is pale and gray, the first hint of dawn washing across the landscape like a shy visitor. Her day begins not with the chime of a bell, but with the quiet insistence of duty calling her forward. She rises with care, easing herself from the bed so as not to wake the youngest child nestled beside her. Her joints are stiff, her muscles sore from the day before, aching arms from carrying firewood, a tender bruise on her shin from where the well bucket had knocked against her. Pain is constant, but it is familiar. She accepts it the way she accepts the changing sky or the rustle of the wind in the wheat. It is simply there. Her feet find the dirt floor, cool and uneven beneath her calloused soles. She wraps herself in a shawl, coarse wool the color of wet stone, dyed with walnut husks and years of weather. The edges are frayed, but the warmth it offers is a comfort. She crosses the room in the dim light, her bare feet making soft sounds, stirring dust that glimmers faintly in the quiet glow. The fire must be revived. Kneeling by the hearth, Agnes stirs the ashes with a stick, her fingers nimble, practiced. She adds kindling twigs gathered near the forest's edge, kept dry beneath the eaves, and blows gently on the embers. Her breath is steady, her patience absolute. A wisp of smoke curls up, then a flicker of flame. She feeds the fire carefully, coaxing it back to life like one might soothe a sick child. The hearth answers, its warmth spreading slowly through the chill. The crackle of burning wood is a familiar sound, as soothing as birdsong. It fills the small room with its rhythm, like a lullaby for the waking world. Smoke rises toward the hole in the roof, a narrow chimney blackened with years of soot, and some of it lingers, clinging to the air, to her hair, to the wool of her shawl. It smells of pine and ash and home. She moves with quiet purpose, lifting a small iron pot and setting it near the fire. She adds water from a clay jug and a pinch of dried herbs, a bit of nettle, maybe sorrel or chickweed, gathered from the hedgerows in warmer months and hung to dry above the hearth. They float on the surface, their scent earthy and faintly bitter. From a cloth-wrapped bundle, she takes a heel of rye bread, its crust hardened to near stone. She breaks it with care, adding the pieces to the pot. It will soften in the water, become a thin gruel breakfast for those who wake hungry. This is not a feast, but it is nourishment. The rye was ground at the Lord's mill, baked in a communal oven, if the family could pay in grain or labor. It tastes of smoke and earth and labor. On better days, there might be a little porridge, boiled barley, or oats thickened until it clings to the spoon. If luck holds, a bit of onion or wild garlic might be stirred in, their flavors sharp and welcome. A wooden spoon stirs the mixture, its handle worn smooth by years of Annie's hands, passed down from her own mother, and perhaps from a mother before her. Children stir in the bed, small limbs stretching, sleep-warm bodies rustling in the straw. There are 3 of them, 2 boys and a girl, their faces smudged with dreams, their voices soft with questions and yawns. The girl, no more than 5, rubs her eyes with the back of her hand and whispers to her mother about a dream of geese flying across the moon. Agnes smiles, smoothing the child's hair, her fingers catching on knots and curls. There is no time for long stories now, but she murmurs something soft in return, a promise to listen later. She helps them dress, pulling tunics over heads, tying belts at waists. The garments are worn, the colors faded, the cloth mended with patches of varying shades. A tear is discovered under one sleeve caught on a thorn yesterday during play. Agnes makes a mental note to sew it in the evening, after the fire is lit and the children sleep again. For now, it must hold. She tucks in the cloth, pats the shoulder, and sends the boy to the door with a kiss on his tousled head. Her husband, John, is already rising. He is a quiet man, his strength in the way he lifts a plow or carries a sack of grain, not in his words. He nods to Agnes, accepting the wooden cup of watered ale she offers. It is weak, barely more than flavored water, but it is safer than the well on most days, and it keeps the edge of thirst away. He eats a few bites of bread softened in broth, then wraps a cloth around a larger piece to take into the fields. Agnes hands him a bundle of herbs, a sprig of rue, a twist of lavender. For protection, she says simply. He nods again and leaves, the door closing behind him with a groan of its leather hinges. Outside, the mist is lifting and the world begins to take shape. Agnes shoulders a wooden bucket and steps outside. The path to the well is muddy, the earth soft and clinging to her feet. She moves carefully, her balance sure despite the slippery ground. The well stands in the center of the village, a circle of stones darkened with moss. The rope is rough, the pulley creaking as she lowers the bucket into the dark, cool depths. When it returns, full and heavy, she braces herself and lifts, her muscles straining. The water sloshes cold against her fingers, and she takes a moment to steady her breath before heading back. Other women are emerging now, shawls wrapped tight, buckets swinging from hands. A murmur of greetings, soft and warm. Peace be with you. The fire's smoking again. The hens won't lay. They are not idle words, but threads in a web of community, woven each morning with the rising sun. These women share burdens and secrets, herbs and bread, laughter and tears. Back at the cottage, Agnes pours water into a basin and washes the children's faces, their protests half-hearted. She braids her daughter's hair, quick fingers weaving strands into a tidy plate. She gathers eggs, if the hens have given any from the coop beside the house. The hens cluck softly, pecking at the scattered feed. A single egg lies in the straw, warm and perfect. She cups it in her palm, marveling quietly at the small miracle. The garden behind the cottage calls next. It is a modest patch, fenced with woven branches to keep the pigs out. Leeks grow in neat rows, cabbages with wide green leaves, beans curling up twisted sticks. She kneels in the earth, her fingers sifting through soil, pulling weeds with practiced care. A stone is moved aside, a worm flicked gently away. She checks the leaves for rot or beetles, her eyes sharp despite the dim light. Above her, the sun climbs higher, its warmth breaking through the clouds. Children's laughter rings across the lane. A neighbor passes with a bundle of firewood, nodding and greeting. The smell of baking someone's bread set in the communal oven wafts across the air. Birds call from the trees. The wind rustles the wheat. The village, once cloaked in mist and silence, is fully awake. And Agnes, silent, steadfast Agnes, moves from task to task, not as a burdened soul, but as a living part of this rhythm. The work is never done, but it is familiar. It is hers, from water to fire, from garden to child, from mist to light. The morning unfolds, one quiet step at a time. Step back inside the cottage, where the scent of wood smoke clings to every surface, and the air holds the softness of early light. The door, made from uneven planks and bound with iron nails blackened by time, swings gently shut behind you. It groans slightly on its leather hinges, closing out the brightness of the morning and wrapping you again in the hushed warmth of a world apart. This space, humble and worn, is not just a roof over Anna's head. It is the universe in which her life unfolds, every corner touched by her presence, every shadow shaped by her labor. The walls are not smooth stone or polished timber, but a lattice work of humble necessity. Wattle and daub, thin branches woven together like a great basket, are smeared with a thick mixture of mud, straw, and dung, each scoop pressed by hand. The result is uneven, the color of dry earth, with small cracks spidering through the surface where rain and time have pulled at its seams. It keeps out the wind, but not all the cold. In the depths of winter, frost creeps along the inner walls, and Agnes covers them with bundles of straw or hangs blankets when she can spare them. Still, it is shelter. It is enough. The thatched roof sags a little in the middle, held aloft by beams blackened with years of smoke. The thatch itself, bundles of reed and straw, layered thickly, has seen many seasons. It is heavy with moisture in the spring, dry and crackling in the summer, and sometimes gives way to a mouse's burrow or a bird's nest tucked beneath the eaves. When the rain comes hard, it leaks in places. Agnes knows where. She sets clay pots beneath the drips, watching the ripples grow with each plink of water. During the worst storms, the sound is like a lullaby, soft, repetitive, earthy. The floor underfoot is not wood or stone, but packed dirt hard as clay in summer, soft and muddy in spring. It is swept daily with a broom made from bound twigs, its bristles thin from use. Agnes scatters straw over the floor in winter to insulate against the cold that seeps up from beneath, and in high summer she leaves it bare so it can breathe. In one corner near the door, she has pressed smooth stones into the dirt to form a rough surface for scraping mud off her shoes. Though more often than not, she walks barefoot, her soles thickened by the earth's daily lessons. The heart of the room, the literal heart, is the hearth. A circle of blackened stone sunken slightly into the floor, its center hosts a fire that never fully dies. Even when the flames rest, glowing embers nestle beneath the ash, waiting to be stirred. Agnes tends the fire with reverence. It is not only heat, but life, the source of every meal, the drying warmth for damp clothes, the light that guides her hands in the dark. She knows how to feed it gently with kindling, when to add split logs or dried peat, how to bank the coals overnight beneath a layer of ash so that it may be revived at dawn. The smell of the fire is in her hair, her clothes, the wool of the bedding. It is her perfume, her shield, her constant companion. There is no chimney in the modern sense, only a hole cut into the thatch to allow smoke to escape. It works imperfectly. Smoke drifts sideways, curling along the beams before rising. It clings to everything. The rafters are thick with soot. The linen that hangs by the bed is tinged dark with the residue of 1,000 small fires. The children sometimes cough, their throats dry with the smoke, but this is simply life. The fire gives more than it takes. Furniture is scarce, built by hand or traded for with labor or goods. A low bench sits near the fire, its legs uneven, wobbling slightly on the dirt floor. It serves as seat, table, and resting place for elbows during late-night sewing. A simple plank of wood laid across barrels becomes a working table. Here, dough is kneaded, herbs are sorted, cloth is cut. In the corner stands a wooden chest, its surface stained by time and hands. It holds the family's meager treasures: a small bone-handled knife, a handful of coins, scraps of dyed cloth, the children's best tunics, folded carefully for Sundays or feast days. A wooden spoon carved by Anna's husband lies on top, smoothed by use until it shines. Near the hearth is a cradle, little more than a wooden box lined with straw and soft with scraps of linen. If there is a baby, it sleeps here, rocked gently with a foot as Agnes kneads dough or spins wool. If there is no infant, the cradle waits, sometimes holding a pile of drying herbs, sometimes a kitten that curls in the warmth. Its presence is constant, a silent possibility. Against one wall stands a large straw mattress, the family's bed. It is not private. There are no bedrooms, no separate spaces. Privacy is a luxury of the wealthy. Here, all is shared. At night, Agnes lies beside her husband, their limbs tangled with the children, who press close for warmth. The blanket is thick wool, patched and heavy, and beneath it lies a coarse linen sheet. In winter, hot stones from the hearth are wrapped in cloth and tucked at the foot of the bed to keep frost from toes. In summer, they sleep in lighter garments, the air still and hot, the fire banked low. Autumn is a season of anxious preparation. It is the time of apples, root vegetables, drying, salting, storing. Agnes walks through her garden with a critical eye, lifting pumpkins with both hands, brushing away dirt to check for softness. She braids onions and garlic, strings them from wall to wall. She wraps apples in straw and layers them in wooden crates, checking for bruises. One spoiled apple can ruin them all. This is when the animals are fattened. If the family has a pig, it is fed generously with scraps, bread, and boiled roots. Slaughtering is done in the cold, and Agnes is there for it all, boiling water, cleaning intestines, salting cuts of meat. Nothing is wasted. The skin becomes parchment or shoes. The fat is rendered. The bones are cracked for marrow. She scrubs the blood from her apron with ashes and snow. There is satisfaction in the work, in a larder full of turnips, jars of honey, cheese wheels nestled in hay. But satisfaction is tinged with fear. Will it be enough? Will the stores last until spring? Winter comes slowly but completely. Frost curls along the windows. The garden lies in silence. The trees stand bare and still. Snow muffles the world. Inside the cottage, Agnes spins wool beside the fire, the spindle humming in her lap. Her hands are busy even when the land sleeps. She knits socks, patches blankets, mends tunics. The children huddle near her, their fingers threading beads, their eyes watching the way her wool grows longer with each pass. Laundry, when it can be done, is an ordeal. She carries a basket of soiled clothes to the river, breaks the ice with a stick, and scrubs fabric on a board until her knuckles bleed. The clothes freeze before they dry, stiff and ghostly on the line. Still, they must be washed. Dirt carries disease, and in winter, a cough can become a grave. Inside the home, the days are dim and slow. The children squabble more, bored and restless. Agnes tells stories to calm them of saints, of brave hens, of a goose who tricked a fox. She mixes herbs into tea, stirs broth over the fire, bakes flatbread on a stone. Every act is meant to stretch time, stretch supplies, stretch patience. When the sky darkens by mid-afternoon and the wind howls under the door, she lights a rushlight and gathers her work close. Her labor does not end with farming. Agnes is also the village healer, or one of them. Women know the ways of healing, passed down through generations like recipes. She knows which leaf eases a fever, which bark dulls pain. She knows to whisper a charm over a newborn's head, just in case to tie red thread around a child's wrist against sickness. Neighbors come to her with burns, cuts, coughs. She does what she can, her supplies meager, her heart generous. Sometimes she assists with childbirth. She has borne 5 children herself and lost 2. She knows the sounds of labor, the cries of pain, the wet silence of death. She kneels beside her neighbors, holds their hands, wipes their faces. She knows how to cut the cord with a boiled knife, how to press herbs against the wound to stop the bleeding. She carries these memories silently, as women do. Her clothes reflect her life. Her skirts are patched so often that no one remembers the original color. Her shoes, when she has them, are leather turned soft with use, tied with twine. In muddy seasons, she wears wooden pattens, walking like a stork above the mire. Her apron is stiff with flour and grease. Her shawl always smells faintly of smoke. She is not alone in her labor. The village is full of women like her, their names different, but their work the same. They pass one another in the lane, nodding, sometimes trading news or eggs or a kind word. They attend the same church, share the same tithes, endure the same burdens. There is comfort in that shared struggle, in knowing that others rise and toil as she does. There are no days off. Only feast days offer pause, and even then, the work is different, not gone. On saints' days, she bakes. On holy days, she scrubs. On funerals, she weeps while kneading dough. Her body knows no idleness. Even in sleep, her dreams are filled with lists, tasks, plans. And yet, amid the exhaustion, there is pride. Pride in the bread that rose perfectly, in the garden that bore extra beans, in the child who outgrew her tunic. There is satisfaction in the clean swept floor, the stocked shelves, the healed blister. There is meaning in the mending, the stirring, the spinning. When she finally sinks onto the bench beside the hearth, her whole body sighs. The children are asleep, their cheeks pink from the fire. Her husband dozes beside them, his hands rough from the plow. She leans back, lets her feet rest, listens to the quiet crackle of flame. The work will begin again at dawn. The earth will need tilling, the wool spinning, the meals cooking. Her body will ache, her back will bend, but she will rise as she always has. For Agnes, work is not a burden. It is her being. It is how she loves. And so she sits, her breath slow and even, letting the warmth settle into her bones. Outside, the wind turns in the dark, brushing against the walls. Inside, the hearth glows. The work waits. But for now, just now, she rests in the sacred stillness she has earned. And as is life, like the thread she spins each evening by the hearth, is wound around a spindle of expectation. Not in a rigid, oppressive way, at least not as she would describe it, but as a matter of course, as inevitable as the rising of the sun or the turning of the seasons. From the moment she took her first breath within these thatched village walls, her future was gently and visibly mapped out. To grow, to learn the work of a household, to marry, to bear children, to serve her family and her faith until her body was too tired to do so anymore. No one ever told her this aloud. It did not need saying. She saw it in her mother's hands scrubbed red from washing linens in the cold stream, stirring stew with the same wooden spoon she now uses. She saw it in her grandmother's quiet smile, in the bent-backed figure of the neighbor woman who still weeded her garden with steady, slow hands. She heard it in the lullabies, in the gossip, and the whispered prayers at night. Womanhood was not a choice. It was a shape she would grow into, like a tree bending toward the light. As a child, Agnes was folded gently into the world of women. Her earliest memories are tactile, wiping her hands on the hem of her mother's apron, plucking feathers from a chicken with hot fingers, the soft hiss of steam rising from a cauldron, the smell of yeast and crushed herbs. She was too small to lift the well bucket, but strong enough to carry a smaller jug, too little to hold a full broom, but quick to follow behind with a handful of straw, mimicking the sweep that kept their cottage floor clean. She learned by watching and then by doing. There was no formal instruction, no books, no lectures. Her education was in action. By the time she could braid her own hair, she could also pluck a goose, milk a goat, patch a tear in a tunic, and cook a pot of porridge without burning it. If she asked questions, they were answered with proverbs or silence. It was not that her elders were unkind, but rather that the answers were in the doing. You learned to knead by kneading. You learned to mother by mothering. Her transition from girl to woman was marked not by ceremony, but by the sudden shift in how others looked at her. The boys in the village no longer pulled her braids or tossed clumps of mud in play. The older women began to ask her to carry heavier buckets, trusted her to stir the stew without supervision, sent her on errands farther from the cottage. When she first bled, her mother noticed the stains before she did and handed her a folded cloth with a look that held both pride and weariness. No words were exchanged. They weren't needed. She was considered of marriageable age soon after, even though her thoughts still wandered with the clouds and her hands still trembled when threading a needle. There was no question of whether she wished to marry. That was not how the village worked. Marriage was not romance, though sometimes affection grew between husband and wife like moss on a stone, slow, soft, and persistent. It was a contract of labor, of survival. Two families joined, not by love, but by the shared hope that together they could raise children, harvest grain, mend fences, and face winter with a little more strength. Suitors did not knock on the door with flowers or poems. Instead, they spoke with her father, standing in the lane or by the well, discussing sheep and tools and family temperament. If her family owned a patch of land or a few livestock, this increased her value. If she had a reputation for being quiet, hard-working, fertile-looking, this mattered too. She knew her dowry would be modest, perhaps a goat, a basket of preserved fruit, a bit of land her father had been saving, but it would be enough. When John, her future husband, came calling, she didn't know him well. He was a boy she'd seen at the market, a quiet one with dark hair and a steady stride. He brought her a piece of honeycomb, sticky and golden, and she offered him a smile. That was courtship. They walked once along the stream, saying little. His hands were calloused, his tunic stained with grain dust. He didn't promise her the moon or stars, only a roof, a fire, a life. The wedding was simple. No church bells rang. They stood before the priest and exchanged vows, her hand in his, trembling only slightly. Her dress was the best she owned, with a strip of embroidery her mother had added just for the day. Neighbors brought bread, jugs of ale, a smoked ham that was sliced thin to feed many. There was music, pipes, drums, voices singing old songs that looped like the river. Children danced, hens clucked nearby, and the fire burned bright long into the evening. There was laughter and a little crying, though not by Agnes. That night she crossed the threshold into her new home, a cottage smaller than her childhood one, but warmed by the same kind of fire. The bed was unfamiliar, the blankets different, but she lay beside a man who did not speak much, and that comforted her. They did what was expected. There was awkwardness, yes, and a little pain, but mostly there was silence, broken only by the wind against the shutters and the creaking of the straw mattress beneath their weight. From that moment on, Agnes's identity shifted. She was no longer a daughter, but a wife. Her mornings began with the tending of his fire. Her evenings ended with his worn tunic folded near the bed. She took his rhythms into her own, the way he preferred his bread, how he liked the tools stacked, where he stored his boots. They lived not in passion, but in parallel, each carrying part of the day's burden, each watching the other age one line at a time. Motherhood came soon, as it did for most women. Her belly grew in time with the barley. She moved slower, felt the tug of her child even before its first cry. Labor was long, hard, and bloody. The midwife, an older woman with eyes like ash and hands steady as stone, talked her through the pain. There were herbs to chew, cloths to bite, and prayers muttered in Latin and in the old tongue. When the baby came a boy, red-faced and wailing, Agnes wept, not from joy or sorrow alone, but from the vast, terrifying love that bloomed within her like spring's first thaw. The baby clung to her always. He nursed from her breast with a force that made her gasp. His needs filled every hour. Sleep became a thing of memory. Her body ached in new places. Her hips did not feel like her own, but she kept moving, rocking, humming. The baby learned her scent before anything else. They were one being for a while, and then slowly he began to separate. She had more children. Some lived, one did not. The cottage became a place of lullabies and cries, of scraped knees and whispered stories. Agnes soothed fevers with cool claws, taught her daughters to sew, showed her sons how to tie a bundle of sticks. She measured time not in days, but in teeth lost, shoes outgrown, tunics patched for the 5th time. Her days blurred, bread baking, wool spinning, children chasing each other past the hearth. The floor was never truly clean, the wash never truly done, but there was satisfaction in this chaos, too. She felt it in the arms that clutched her skirt, in the smiles sticky with berries, in the soft breath of a child asleep on her shoulder. As she aged, her role shifted again. The younger women in the village began to call her for advice. They asked her how to keep porridge from burning, how to soothe a colicky baby, how to tell if a man was good enough. She did not have all the answers, but she gave what she could. Sometimes she simply listened. That, too, was a kind of wisdom. When her daughters bled for the first time, she gave them the same folded cloth her mother had once given her. She spoke more than her mother had. She told them that pain would come, and also joy, that life would be hard, but also sweet, that they would learn the rhythm and they would be fine. She watched them marry, watched them walk the same paths she had walked, kneel by the same hearths. She felt pride and also a kind of grief for how quickly time moves, how the hands that once held her own now hold their own children. Her marriage over the years settled into something soft and deep. She and John no longer spoke much, but their silences were companionable. He carved her a new spoon when her old one cracked. She stitched his collar even when her fingers trembled. They slept back to back, warm and close. When he laughed, which was rare, she cherished it like a fire in winter. And as his life was not marked by great triumphs or epic stories, it was a life of tasks, of care, of quiet endurance. She was never a queen, but she ruled her space with gentle authority. She was never a saint, but her patience was holy. She was never a writer, but her legacy was stitched into the hems of dresses, baked into loaves of bread, whispered in bedtime songs. And when the village children speak of her, long after she is gone, they will say she was kind, she worked hard, she loved deeply. And that, in the end, is everything. In the quiet hours between the last meal and the moment the rushlight dims, Agnes turns to one of her oldest comforts, fabric. The fire still crackles low in the hearth, casting long shadows across the room. Her children sleep in the corner, their bodies curled like resting foxes beneath the thick patchwork blanket. The room is hushed, and in this stillness the gentle rustle of thread and cloth becomes its own kind of music. Clothing is not fashion for Agnes. It is survival. It is warmth in winter, modesty in church, protection from thorns and wind. It is history made tangible, threaded through with memory, wear, and the shape of the life that wears it. Her garments are not new. They are not fine. They are worn and patched and stained. But they are hers, and they are enough. She sits on a wooden stool close to the hearth, her spinning spindle dancing slowly at her side. In her lap, a bundle of unwashed wool, still fragrant with lanolin, waits to be carded. She lifts her wooden combs, large, toothed instruments passed down from her mother, and begins the task of aligning the fibers. She moves slowly, gently, drawing the wool through the teeth again and again, until it lies in soft, cloudy tufts. Each stroke is steady, deliberate. It is work that cannot be rushed. It is a quiet meditation, a ceremony of touch and patience. Once the wool is ready, she winds it carefully onto the spindle and begins to spin. Twist, pull, wind. Twist, pull, wind. The rhythm is comforting. She does not need to look. Her fingers know this motion better than prayer. The thread grows between her fingertips like a whisper. It slips and twists and forms a continuous line that connects her to generations of women who once sat in cottages just like this, beneath rafters blackened by smoke, spinning through the hours of the night. Her spindle is simple, a whirl of shaped wood on a smooth shaft, weighted just enough to draw the fibers tight as it spins. She spins by the firelight because the work must be done, and because her body, even in rest, wants purpose. The thread she creates tonight may become a new hem on her son's tunic, a patched sleeve on her daughter's dress, or yarn for a small blanket for the baby, due to the neighbor woman next door. The wool itself has its own story. In early spring, the sheep are shorn, their thick winter coats removed in uneven, matted clumps. Agnes helps with the shearing, steadying the animals, offering calm words, gathering the fleece. The wool must be sorted, cleaned of burrs and manure. washed in warm water with ash soap, then dried in the sun and wind. Only then can it be combed, spun, dyed, and woven. It is a long process, but one she finds oddly satisfying. The transformation from rough fleece to wearable fabric is like magic, slow, humble magic wrought by hand and fire. Her dress, which she wears daily, is made of this wool, coarse, heavy, dyed a muddy brown with walnut husks and iron scrap. It is not flattering, but it is warm and strong. The color hides dirt and wears its stains like metals. The cut is simple: a wide bodice, a long skirt, sleeves tight at the wrist so as not to fall into stew pots or get caught on brambles. It is laced at the front with a leather cord, adjusted as needed to accommodate a swelling belly or a thick winter underlayer. Beneath her dress, she wears a linen shift, its fabric much softer, though now threadbare in spots. Linen, made from flax, is difficult to process, but more comfortable against the skin. Anne's shift was made in high summer, when flax was harvested and retted soaked in water until the fibers loosened from the woody stems, then dried, broken and combed with care. The thread was fine, the weaving slow, and the fabric precious. The shift is washed carefully, aired in the sun, and mended when the seams fray. Over her dress she wears an apron, tied with practiced fingers at the waist. It catches spills, flour, ash, and little hands sticky with honey. It has been patched many times, one corner with an old napkin, another with a scrap from a child's outgrown tunic. Her apron is her second skin. When she removes it at night, her body feels strangely exposed. Her head is always covered. A linen coif or kerchief is tied at the nape of her neck, her hair hidden beneath. It is not vanity. It is expectation, modesty before God, protection from smoke and lice, a mark of her womanhood. Girls may go bareheaded, but wives do not. Her hair, long and dark, is braided before bed, combed with a wooden brush carved by her husband in his younger days. The braid is tight, tucked beneath cloth, kept from tangling in the spinning spindle or in the baby's tiny grasp. Shoes are a luxury. In summer, she often goes barefoot, her soles toughened like leather from the fields. In winter, she wears boots made from rough leather, lined with scraps of wool. They are patched and repatched, the soles replaced with nailed-on scraps of wood or hide. For muddy seasons, she wears pattens, wooden overshoes strapped with leather, that raise her above the muck and clatter softly on stone. They are awkward, but they keep her feet dry. Her children's clothing is made by hand, 2 small tunics and gowns, sewn from repurposed scraps, handed down from sibling to sibling. The hems are let out as they grow and the sleeves patched when they tear. She teaches her daughter to sew the same way she learned, by doing. She threads a dull needle with wool yarn and guides the child's hand through rough linen, teaching her to make stitches small and even to tie off thread without knots. Sewing is not an art. It is a necessity. When enough thread has been spun, it is dyed. Agnes keeps a wooden pot for this, tucked near the fire. She uses walnut husks for brown, onion skins for yellow, woad leaves for blue, and madder roots for red. The dyeing is uneven, blotchy, unpredictable. She stirs with a stick, checking the color, lifting the thread into the light. It is rarely uniform, but it is beautiful in its own quiet way, modeled like autumn leaves or lichen on stone. The colors fade with time, becoming gentler, like memories soft by distance. Weaving, when she has time, is done on a small upright loom, a frame of wood strung with warp threads, through which she passes the weft in steady lines. It is not fast work. A day's weaving might yield a hand's width of cloth, but she is patient. The loom clicks softly with each pass, and she hums to herself as the fabric grows beneath her hands. The finished cloth is coarse, but serviceable. It is cut with care, nothing wasted. A mistake in measuring means a garment that does not fit, and cloth is too dear to discard. She stitches with linen thread, using needles made from bone or iron, her thimble carved from horn. She has no patterns, no chalk lines. She works from memory, from practice. Her fingers know the shapes. There are adornments, though small. A colored ribbon, a bit of embroidery, a decorative stitch along a sleeve. These touches are rare, and Agnes adds them not to impress, but to please herself. When she embroiders, she uses simple motif, stars, leaves, crosses symbols that connect her to the land and the sacred. A single row of red thread on her daughter's sleeve is not just decoration. It is love made visible. She owns a brooch made of wood with a carved flower. It fastens her cloak in winter, and she keeps it in the chest beneath her bed when not in use. It was a wedding gift from her husband, whittled in secret during the long evenings before their first child. It is smooth now from years of touch. She runs her fingers over it when she's thinking, her thumb finding the grooves in the petals without looking. Clothing for Agnes is also identity. Her dress speaks of her station, her age, her skill. She can read others too by their garments. A woman's hemline tells of how much she walks. A neighbor's new apron might suggest a birth gift or a trade well made. A young girl's shift dyed with madder might hint at an upcoming wedding. In a world with no mirrors, clothes tell stories, not of vanity, but of life. There is pride in this craft. Not loud pride, not the kind that boasts, but quiet satisfaction in well-dyed thread, in a tunic that fits just right, in a patch so neatly sewn it becomes part of the fabric. These are her achievements, as real as any harvest, as enduring as any prayer. The spindle slows as the evening deepens. Agnes winds the last bit of thread and sets it aside. Her hands ache slightly, but it is a familiar ache. She flexes her fingers, stretches her back, rises to fold the cloth draped over the bench. Her breath fogs slightly in the cool air. She adjusts her shawl and stoops to check on the children, brushing their hair from their faces, tucking the blanket around their feet. She returns to the hearth, stirs the coals, sets the pot closer to the fire. The room smells of wool and ash and thyme. She sits once more and picks up her needle. There is always more to sew: a rip in her husband's sleeve, a new cuff for her eldest tunic. She threads the needle by firelight, squinting slightly, then begins to stitch. The sound of the thread pulling through cloth is soft, steady, soothing. This is her language: fabric and thread, wool and linen, needle and spindle. She speaks through her stitches. She tells stories in hems and seams. She weaves comfort into tunics and hope into blankets. She repairs what is broken. She preserves what is fading. She clothes her family not just in garments, but in care. As the rushlight gutters low and the fire turns to embers, Agnes sets aside her work. She stands, stretches, folds the cloth neatly. She brushes stray threads from her lap and blows out the light. In the darkness, the room breathes. The wool rests. The loom is silent. But the fabric she has made remains, wrapping her family in quiet love, night after night. Dusk settles slowly over the village. pressing gently against the rooftops, filling the air with a kind of hush. The golden light that just an hour before spilled across the garden beds now slips away, yielding to shadow. The sky deepens to a soft, bruised blue, and the first stars begin to blink awake. Within Inez's small cottage, the fire flickers in quiet conversation with the dark. And in this hour, neither fully day nor holy night, another rhythm begins to stir. The rhythm of faith, of folklore, of the invisible world that shapes her life as surely as bread and soil. Agnes does not name herself a theologian. She cannot read, has never held a book, would not understand the Latin words pressed between parchment leaves even if she had. But she knows what matters. She knows when to kneel. She knows when to cross herself. She knows that bread should not be cut before it's blessed, and that the church bell at matins is not just a sound, but a call, a thread that tethers the village to something greater than itself. Every morning, she begins with a prayer, not out loud, not dramatic, but murmured softly while tying her headscarf or coaxing the fire to life. Her words are simple. God, keep us through the day. She might name her children, her husband, a neighbor who is ill. She might glance upward as she walks to the well, whispering thank you when the sky is clear, or have mercy when the clouds gather darkly on the horizon. She attends Mass when she can most Sundays, unless a child is ill or a pig is broken loose again. The village church is small, old, and cool, even in summer. Its stone walls hold centuries of incense, ash, and song. There are no pews, just rough wooden benches. She kneels on the stone floor, her skirts bunched beneath her, her eyes fixed not on the altar, but on the flickering candles. The priest speaks in Latin, his voice rising and falling like wind through trees. She doesn't understand his words, not really, but she feels their rhythm, their weight. They remind her of rain steady, sometimes distant, always necessary. She knows the saints by their stories, not by their feast days. Saint Apollonia, whose teeth were pulled, so she prays to her when her daughter cries from an aching molar. Saint Margaret, who fought the dragon Agnes, mutters her name when giving birth. Saint Brigid, who turned bathwater into beer Brigid, gets many quiet prayers near harvest time. These saints live not just in heaven, but on her windowsill, where she's placed a small carving of Mary made from a smooth bit of driftwood. A strip of blue wool wrapped around the figure marks her reverence. But faith for Agnes is not confined to the church. Her sacred spaces are also the garden, the forest edge, the stream that curls through the eastern field. She has always felt that God, whoever and wherever he is, might listen just as well beneath an ash tree as under a chapel roof. The Virgin feels close when Agnes gives birth. Christ feels nearer when she kneads dough, turning grain into sustenance with her own hands. And threaded through this Christian belief is another layer older, softer, quiet as moss. Folklore, superstition, the wisdom of grandmothers whispered beside fires long gone cold. Agnes does not question this mixture. It is simply the way of things. Just as one might mend a tunic with both linen and wool, so too does she weave faith with older knowing. She places a sprig of rowan above her door to ward off the bad air that brings fever. She tosses salt over her left shoulder if a pot tips or a spoon falls. She never speaks a child's name aloud in the forest, especially at dusk. Names, after all, have power, and the woods are filled with listening things. She knows the signs. A robin tapping at the window means a visitor is coming. A sudden gust of wind on a still day might be a spirit passing through. If the butter will not churn, it could mean someone has cast an eye on her cow, and she might tie a red thread around its neck just to be safe. None of this is spoken of at church, of course, but neither is it mocked. These beliefs live in the cracks between Sunday and Monday, between the altar and the garden gate. The year is not only measured by seasons, but also by festivals, each rooted in both church and earth. At Candlemas, she lights a beeswax taper and walks the garden path, whispering blessings over the still frozen soil. At Lammas, the loaf mass, she bakes the first bread from the new grain and sets aside a crust for the hearth, an offering, just in case. At All Hallows, she leaves a small dish of milk by the door and speaks her grandmother's name aloud, feeling the veil between worlds draw thin as smoke. Her knowledge of herbs, too, is steeped in both science and story. She knows that yarrow stops bleeding and that nettle eases aching joints. But she also knows that vervain, picked at midnight under a full moon, holds extra strength. That mugwort, tucked into a pillow, can bring dreams of the dead. That elder trees should be greeted with respect. Good day to you, old woman, lest they sour your milk or steal your luck. The village wise woman, old Matilda, lives on the edge of the woods, her cottage half swallowed by ivy and smoke. Some say she's a witch. Agnes does not care. Matilda helped her deliver her third child. Matilda's poultice eased her husband's infected foot. If she murmurs to her kettle or ties feathers to her fence, well, that's her business. The villagers might whisper, but they still go to her when a baby won't stop crying, or when a cow births too early, or when a charm is needed for courage. Even the priest once drank her chamomile tea when the winter cough clung too tightly to his lungs. Agnes keeps a small pouch near her chest with things Matilda gave her. A smooth stone with a hole in the center, a dried sprig of rosemary, a pinch of ash wrapped in cloth. She does not show it to others. It is hers, private and potent. She touches it when she is afraid, when the wind howls, or when her child's fever runs high. The invisible world is not always sinister. It is also full of small wonders. She believes in fairies, not the winged kind from stories, but the older, stranger sort, mischievous, unpredictable, always just out of sight. She leaves crumbs at the windowsill and never whistles after dark. She teaches her children to say thank you to trees when picking branches and to bow slightly when crossing streams. Respect costs nothing, and it might buy protection. Dreams carry meaning, too. When Agnes dreams of water, she knows change is coming. If she dreams of wolves, she wakes wary. When her grandmother visits her in a dream, saying nothing but smiling, Agnes lights a candle and whispers her name in thanks. She trusts these signs. They are her compass in a world without maps. Even illness, which she knows in both body and soul, is not only a matter for poultices and teas. A long cough might be a sickness of the spirit. A melancholy might be a curse or a punishment for forgotten prayer. She fights it on all fronts, boiling nettles, saying her rosary, burning rosemary in the fire. The balance between body, soul, and spirit is delicate. It must be tended as carefully as the garden. At the heart of her spiritual world is a deep, quiet humility. She does not believe she controls the world, but she does believe she can live in right relationship with it, with the land, with the saints, with the old ways and the new, with the seen and the unseen. This is not arrogance. It is harmony. When thunder cracks over the hills, she does not tremble. She crosses herself, draws her children close, and whispers, "The sky is speaking." When a cow births twins, she thanks St. Bridget and sets aside extra milk. When the bread rises high and golden, she crosses the loaf before slicing, not out of superstition, but out of gratitude. When she watches the stars from the garden, she feels her place in the world, not at its center, but as a small, steady point within it. Her children inherit this worldview without question. They grow up learning the names of herbs and saints side by side. They know to bow their heads in church and to never cut yarrow on Sundays. They wear charms sewn into their sleeves. They fear the woods, but love them too. They cross themselves when they hear the church bell and knock twice on the doorpost when returning home. Faith, for Agnes, is not only belief, it is behavior. It is lived. It is the lighting of a candle, the turning of the soil, the tying of red thread, the singing of a hymn. It is the whisper before sleep, the blessing over food, the silence held at twilight. It is not loud, not showy. It does not demand. It simply is. And in this, Agnes is not exceptional. She is one of many women who hold the spiritual fabric of the village together, not with sermons, but with song and salt and stories, who stitch prayers into hymns, who plant their hopes beside their turnips, who watch the moon and remember their dead, who make meaning from bread and smoke and ash. When Agnes looks up from her work and sees the great manor on the distant hill, its stone towers rising pale against the sky, its banners catching the breeze like sails, she does not feel anger. She does not dream of life behind those walls, nor does she pretend it is something she could ever reach. It is simply there, just as the mountains are there, just as the sea must be, though she has never seen it. The castle exists in her world, like a season or a weather, a part of life, but not a part she touches. Still, she wonders. Not often, but sometimes. When she's stirring the pot or walking alone to gather herbs, she lets her thoughts wander toward the lives of those other women, the ones who live not by the plow, but by the schedule of feasts, who sleep not in straw-stuffed mattresses on wooden frames, but in canopied beds draped with embroidered linens, their heads resting on cushions filled with goose feathers. She does not envy them, but she is curious. She has seen them from afar. There is the lady of the manor, who sometimes rides through the village on a tall horse with her train of servants. Her dress is always long, too long for walking in mud, its hem lifted by a maid, or trailing like a river of silk behind her. Her hands are gloved, her face pale, her posture impossibly straight. Agnes has heard she spends most mornings in the solar, a bright room high in the manor, filled with sunlight and tapestries. It is said she embroiders there, or reads from books that only the clergy can read. Agnes imagines that room. She sees thick carpets, a carved table, windows of glass, not horn or oiled parchment, but real glass that catches and scatters light. She pictures the lady seated in a chair with arms, a hound at her feet, a woman nearby reading aloud from some romance about knights and enchantments. And she wonders what it must be like to live a day without aching hands, without mud between your toes, without the daily hum of chickens and the press of children. But the life of a noble woman is not one of idleness, not really. It is simply a different kind of labor. A lady of high rank may not scrub floors or knead dough, but her days are still full. She must oversee the household, its servants, its accounts, its stores of linen and ale and grain. She must manage the kitchens, ensure the tapestries are cleaned and mended, decide what will be served at feast or fast. She must prepare dowries for her daughters, instruct her sons in courtesy, receive guests with grace, and maintain her own appearance in accordance with her station. Her days are filled with obligations as structured and unyielding as any field calendar. Marriage for her is rarely a matter of love. It is arrangement, alliance, transaction. She may be promised at 12, wed at 14, pregnant by 15. Her husband may be older, distant, often away at war or court. She may spend long months alone in her solar, managing an estate she did not choose on behalf of a family not her own. Yet she finds her own forms of power. The noble woman commands a household. She decides which servant girl becomes a lady's maid, which boy is sent to train as a page. Her approval is sought, her preferences accommodated. She hosts banquets, presides over ceremonies, signs letters with a seal bearing her family crest. In a world that often overlooks the voices of women, she speaks and is heard at least within her walls. She dresses not for comfort, but for display. Her gowns are made from wool and silk dyed deep and rich, saffron, wine, azure, forest green. Her sleeves are long and trailing, her bodice stiff with stays, her veils fine as mist. She wears girdles studded with glass beads, chains of brass or silver, rings etched with family sigils. Her shoes are soft, meant for hallways and gardens, not for paths and pigpens. Her hair is hidden beneath elaborate headdresses, wimples, pennons, cauls of netted gold. Her skin is kept pale, a mark of refinement and leisure. She uses crushed herbs and lead-based powders to lighten her complexion. Agnes cannot imagine this. Her own hands are darkened by the sun, her cheeks browned by wind and work. But she has heard that noble women even avoid windows for fear of freckles. The noble lady eats different food: roasted fowl, cheeses aged and spiced, pies filled with fruit and meat. She drinks wine diluted with honey and sometimes perfumed with rosewater. Her meals are served in courses, announced by servants, accompanied by music if the manor is well staffed. She eats with a knife, sometimes a spoon, always with a cloth at hand. She is expected to eat little, delicately, to speak kindly, to smile at the appropriate moments. But even here, Agnes sees limits. The noble woman may have meat, but she also has restrictions. She may not eat freely during Lent or on holy days. She must observe etiquette, follow customs, and present the image of virtue and modesty at all times. Her life is not her own. It is a performance, a constant balancing act between power and propriety. Childbirth is no easier in stone halls than it is in cottages. A noble woman may have midwives, but she also bears the weight of lineage. Her womb is not just hers, it is the future of the estate, of alliances, of bloodlines. She must produce sons, and if she cannot, she risks disgrace, dismissal, even being sent away. She may name her children, but she does not raise them. Sons are fostered out, daughters trained in other households. Her time with them is brief and precious. Still, there is beauty in her world, in tapestries that show forests and unicorns, in psalters painted with gold leaf, in gardens planted not for food but for pleasure with roses, lavender, boxwood hedges, in music played on lutes and harps, and dances performed by firelight, and poetry whispered behind fans. Agnes, sitting by her hearth with thread in her lap, wonders what those women dream of. If they long to walk barefoot in the stream, to eat bread hot from the oven without waiting for it to be served, to sit without being watched. She wonders if the lady ever envies her freedom, the freedom to raise her own children, to speak plainly, to laugh without care. Perhaps they envy one another. Perhaps neither world is fully free. At the convent, too, live women of a different path. Some are noble-born, sent to the cloister not by calling, but by lack of dowry or political convenience. Others choose that life drawn to its order and purpose. Agnes has met nuns. They come to the village sometimes to tend the sick, to offer prayer or instruction. They move quietly, dressed in black or gray, their faces calm, their eyes direct. The abbess is a powerful woman, more powerful than many men. She oversees land, servants, income. She writes letters, maintains archives, governs her sisters with wisdom and strength. The nuns live by a strict rule: prayers at fixed hours, labor divided among them, silence kept in certain places. But they also read, they learn, they paint manuscripts, copy scripture, study plants and healing. They possess knowledge Agnes cannot imagine, and yet they too give up much. They do not marry. They do not bear children. Their lives are circumscribed by stone walls and oaths. Agnes wonders if they ever miss the sound of children's laughter, the smell of stew simmering over a hearth. If they ever dream of walking under the stars, hand in hand with someone they love. Across all these layers of society, the thread of womanhood binds them together. Though their lives are different in shape, they are alike in rhythm, birth, blood, toil, joy, silence, prayer. Each carries burdens the other cannot see. Each knows love, pain, longing. Agnes does not compare her life to theirs with resentment. Her world is not lacking, it is just rooted in different soil. She knows what it is to hunger, to sweat, to mourn, to dance. She has spun thread, birthed children, buried the old, healed the sick, loved fiercely. Her hands bear witness to her days. Her body is a map of labor and love. She may never wear velvet, but she knows the softness of her daughter's hair. She may never dine in a hall of banners, but she knows the taste of a stolen apple on a summer's day. She may never read a poem penned in Latin, but she tells stories by firelight that her children will carry into their own twilight years. There is no gold thread in her apron, but there is strength in its seams. And so she looks once more at the manor, far off and glowing in the dusk. A candle is lit in a high window. Perhaps a noble woman sits there, now hands folded, looking down on the fields. Perhaps, just for a moment, they see each other across the quiet distance. Two women, separate but linked, each living the only life she truly knows, each carrying the world in her own way. And the sky darkens, and the stars come out, and the earth, rich with roots and footsteps, holds them both. The fire is low now, just a faint glow, pulsing quietly beneath the ash, casting shadows that no longer dance, but simply rest. Outside, the stars have taken full command of the night sky, patient and steady as if they have always been there and always will be. The sounds of the village are gone, the distant barking of dogs, the soft rustle of livestock settling in, the last murmured prayers, and in their place comes only stillness, a deep, enveloping hush. Agnes sleeps, her breath slow, her body curled gently toward the wall, her hand resting on her belly in a gesture that is neither conscious nor intentional, but simply instinctive. The day is done, and with it, another thread in the endless tapestry of life has been woven. The life of a medieval peasant woman may seem far removed from our own. Her tools were different. Her gods may have worn other names. Her dangers came not from wires or screens, but from wolves, from fever, from hunger, from war. And yet, as we step back slowly, gently from the warmth of her hearth and the soft folds of her world, what remains with us is not her hardship, but her humanness. She loved, she sang, she worried, she hoped, she prayed, she worked, she mourned, she laughed. She was not a queen. She was not a saint. She was not a name carved in stone or copied into parchment. She was a woman, one of many, living a life that would not be remembered by chronicles or by kings, but by the very soil she worked, by the children she raised, by the stories she passed on. She lived not to be famous, but to keep life moving forward. That, in its own quiet way, is a kind of legacy. Her days were not marked by triumphs, but by patterns. The sweep of a broom, the turning of the earth, the spinning of thread, the rocking of a cradle, these were her monuments. These were the rhythms by which she shaped her world. And though we have left her village now, though we step out of her time and back into our own, the echo of her life remains. In every loaf of bread baked with care, in every patch sewn onto a child's coat, in every whispered prayer over a sleeping loved one, in the songs that mothers hum without realizing they remember them, in the way we hold hands, in the way we bury our dead, in the quiet rituals that give our days shape. The past is never gone. It lives in us quietly. History often tells us of the great, of emperors, popes, generals, inventors, but beneath that layer soft as moss beneath the trees lie the lives of people like Agnes, the ones who never ruled but endured, who never discovered continents but carried water, who never painted ceilings or built cathedrals, but scrubbed floors and raised children who would one day walk beneath those vaulted domes. And for every crown placed on a noble head, 1,000 hands like hers wove the cloth. For every battle won, 1,000 women fed the men who returned. For every song remembered, there was a woman who first sang it by firelight, while peeling turnips or mending a tunic or waiting for the rain to stop. These are not forgotten lives, not truly. They are simply quiet. And sometimes all we need to do is sit in silence long enough to hear them again. So as the last cinders of the fire fade and the soft breath of sleep curls around you like wool, remember her, not with sorrow, not with pity, but with respect, with tenderness, with the knowledge that your life too is a thread, that every gentle act of care you offer, every meal, every lullaby, every comforting touch continues a story that began long before you and will go on long after. And perhaps somewhere under some other sky, someone else is listening. Someone else is wondering about us, just as we once wondered about her. Someone is waiting for the echo of our ordinary days to reach them, to remind them they are not alone, because we are never truly alone. The earth holds memory, the sky holds prayer, and history, no matter how calm, boring, or sleepy, is just another word for remembering. Good night, Agnes. Good night, listener. May your dreams be peaceful and your story well told.